It is estimated that over 1 million persons in the U.S. are blind, and each year 50,000 more will become blind. The National Federation of the Blind knows that blindness is not the characteristic that defines them or their future. Every day, they raise the expectations of blind people. Today on Weekend Connection, we'll be talking about the importance of Braille literacy, the world's first digital talking newspaper, and encouragement for seniors who deal with vision loss. Now, let's get connected. This is Weekend Connection on the Bible Broadcasting Network, and our guest today is Chris Danielson, Director of Public Relations for the National Federation of the Blind. The National Federation of the Blind is the largest organization of the blind in America. Founded in 1940, the Federation has grown to include over 50,000 members. Chris, first of all, thank you for joining us today on the broadcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Chris, can you take us back to the beginnings of the NFB, the how and why it was founded?
Certainly. The National Federation of the Blind was founded in 1940, and it was and is a federation of other organizations of blind people that existed in various states. And when it was founded, it was only 7 states. There were existing organizations of blind people in 7 states that met in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania on November 16th of 1940 and had a very small convention, only 16 people, and formed the National Federation of the Blind. And it elected as its first president a man named Jacobus Tenbrook, who was a lawyer and college professor, and he and the 15 other people at the convention organized the federation, and we have been growing ever since. So we're very proud of what we've been able to achieve, because now we've grown to where we have affiliates in all 50 states, in the District of Columbia, and in Puerto Rico, and something like 700 local chapters, although the number fluctuates a little bit. But that's where we are today.
Now, the mission of the National Federation of the Blind is to achieve widespread emotional acceptance and intellectual understanding that the real problem of blindness is not the loss of eyesight, but the misconceptions and lack of information which exist. Chris, could you make us aware of some of those misconceptions we might have?
Certainly. The blind are generally perceived, less so today, but certainly when the Federation was founded, and certainly to a certain extent today, as generally not being competent or able to live our lives and make our own decisions independently. And it's a strange misconception, because blindness only affects a person's eyesight, but yet blind people have historically been considered not to have capacity to do any number of things, including parenting children, including getting an education, including performing certain jobs, even when those jobs don't require vision. And so these are the problems that blind people face. And the great insight that Jacobus Tenbrook and other Federation leaders have had is that blindness is not really an incapacitating disability. It is a characteristic that people have, and it requires those of us who are blind to do things in different ways from the ways that sighted people do them. You know, it does not diminish us as human beings, and it is not the characteristic that defines us or predicts our future. It isn't the sum total of who we are. It's just a characteristic that we have, and it certainly imposes some limitations, but all characteristics impose limitations. If you are maybe not as tall as another person, or maybe not as physically strong as another person, then you certainly have limitations too. But that doesn't define your whole life.
Right. And
we feel the same way about blindness.
Our guest today is Chris Danielson, Director of Public Relations for the National Federation of the Blind. The NFB is a consumer organization of blind people working together to improve opportunities for the blind and the understanding of blindness by the general public. Chris, studies show that only AIDS and cancer are feared more than blindness. There must be emotional challenges that have to be overcome in order for one to manage their life as a blind person.
Well, certainly there are, particularly when one has lost vision later in life. People like myself who were born blind arguably don't have as tough a time, although it depends on how people around us react to the fact that we're blind. If our parents or what have you treat it like a tragedy, then it can easily become a tragedy. But certainly when people lose sight later in life, there is a grieving process. Often people are very discouraged at first because they're used to doing things by using their eyesight, and they can't do them that way anymore. And so at first they believe, well, I just can't do certain things anymore because I no longer have my eyesight. And one of the things that the Federation does, and one of the reasons that it's so important to us to be organized in local chapters and state affiliates across the nation, is that we want the ability to be able to reach out to people in their local communities and say, you can still live the life you want. You can continue to do the things, or the vast majority of the things that you have always enjoyed doing. You can do those things as a blind person. Part of our mission is to help people who have lost vision through that emotional process, because at first blindness is very frightening, and like any unknown, it's very different, and of course there's a grieving process for what we've lost, and a getting used to not having the sight that we once had. But it is possible to get through that process, but one of the ways to get through it is to find an organization like the National Federation of the Blind, find the support of other blind people who can help you navigate through that initial very dark and sad and frightening time that occurs when you first lose your vision.
We're talking to Chris Danielson, Director of Public Relations for the National Federation of the Blind. Chris, why is Braille literacy so important for blind youth, and is there opportunity for sighted children to pick up the Braille language?
Well, certainly. Just a slight correction. Braille isn't a language. It's a code. It represents English and other languages, but it is, in English, for example, it's alphanumeric the same way that the alphabet is. It's just different symbols representing the letters and numbers. It is important for blind children for the same reason that learning to read and write is in general for children. Braille is the only code that blind people have to read and write, because it is the only efficient tactile code that we can use. And there are other sources of gathering information like audio and text-to-speech and so forth, but those do not actually teach the skill of reading and writing, which is a different skill from just listening in order to acquire information. And of course, if you're blind and have another disability, particularly deafness, then audio isn't going to do you any good at all. So Braille is extremely important. It teaches the literacy skills we need, the ability to spell words in the English language, to properly write and punctuate sentences, all of the things that we expect sighted children to learn from reading. Now, sighted children can learn Braille, and in fact, we encourage children who are legally blind but may have some vision to actually learn Braille anyway, because a lot of eye diseases are degenerative, and there's no way to know if or when you might lose all of the sight that you have.
Right.
And also, it is helpful because print, while you may be able to technically read it, particularly if it's enlarged, it may not be always the most efficient way for you to read. You're not always going to have that magnifier handy. Maybe you can find some uses for Braille that will help you in your home, like labeling your canned goods or your CD collection or what have you. And that way you can deal with them by touch instead of having to break out the big magnifier or put them on the CCTV all of the time. And also we've discovered that when we teach Braille to sighted children, and sighted adults for that matter, they really enjoy it. They can pick up on the alphabet fairly quickly. Of course, it takes longer to learn contracted Braille, but it is a code that anybody can actually learn fairly quickly.
This is Weekend Connection on the Bible Broadcasting Network, and we're talking to Chris Danielson, Director of Public Relations for the National Federation of the Blind. The NFB has been the leading source for helping blind and visually impaired people find the resources, support, and hope they need to lead productive and fulfilling lives. Chris, I understand you have the world's first digital talking newspaper for the blind. Is there a paid subscription to use this, and how does it work?
There is not a paid subscription. It is absolutely free to consumers. It's called NFB Newsline and can be accessed via a touch-tone telephone. It can also be accessed via the web or via an iPhone app for those who have the iPhone and are using VoiceOver. And it's a great service. What it actually does is it gives access to newspapers, magazines, and other publications, including international publications. And so it's a great resource. The way it works is that normally a state agency or state library for the blind sponsors the service, and so that is how it is paid for, and so it is free to the consumer. And you can contact our NFB Newsline. There's a toll-free number on our website that is available, and also you can click a link directly from our website to get involved, or you can call our national office at 410-659-9314 and be connected to Newsline as well, to our NFB Newsline team. And they will get you signed up. And it's a very easy sign-up process, particularly if you're already eligible, for example, for the Library of Congress Talking Book Program or what have you. So we regularly get people signed up within a very short amount of time, and then you're on your way to using NFB Newsline.
Chris, we have quite a few seniors who listen to BBN regularly, and perhaps they are dealing with some type of vision loss. Can the resources at NFB help them?
Absolutely. We have a whole division that is devoted to the concerns of blind seniors. And, of course, we always encourage people to contact their local chapter of the National Federation of the Blind and get involved, because they will find all sorts of resources for blind seniors. So we absolutely believe in supporting people who are losing vision as they age, and in particular, if you contact our independence market, you'll find a lot of resources that will automatically get you started on the way to being more independent as a blind senior.
Now, Chris, if I know a blind or a visually impaired person who could use the help of the NFB, I believe you gave the phone number earlier, how would I contact you?
Well, you can contact us at that phone number, 410-659-9314. You can also go to our website, which is nfb.org. We are on Facebook. All you have to do is search on Facebook for National Federation of the Blind. We are on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is NFB_voice. And if what you're most used to doing is using email, then you can just send us an email to nfb@nfb.org. That's just NFB, the acronym National Federation of the Blind, at nfb.org. Just send us an email, and we'll take everything from there.
Our guest today has been Chris Danielson, Director of Public Relations for the National Federation of the Blind. The NFB is a consumer organization of blind people working together to improve opportunities for the blind and the understanding of blindness by the general public. Chris, once again, thank you for joining us on Weekend Connection today.
Well, thank you so much for having us, and we'd be happy to come on the program again if we can provide any more information about any of our programs.
Thank you again, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this feature, a production of BBN, the Bible Broadcasting Network. BBN provides 24-hour Christian programming, great Christian music, and Bible teaching. Listen to BBN by clicking the link in the description.